Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Dr. Hawthorn here, and today we have another episode of Commands with Dr. Hawthorn. Do you still remember this image? Last time we talked about spiral array with this image. This is the morning model's bathroom. The sink area in the middle of the picture and also in the middle of the bathroom is the highlight of the scene. However, to build this sink is not the only option to have spiral array as one of your help. When I created this, I was looking at one out of the 8 part of the entire objects, and if you can find the similarity between the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the sink. Also, the small sculpture on the wall here, you will think that it would be easier if I can just create half of it and then clone it to the other half, right? Today we will be talking about another modifier, which is the mirror modifier. Let's jump into Blender now. And in Blender, we will start our exercise or our tutorial, we can say, from the default cube also. I have a cube. I already have the mirror modifier on. Let me get rid of it. This cube is the default one. And if we are going to the edit mode, I have already subdivided some of the faces. I am deleting this by pressing X, and then I'm adding another cube just to start clean. This is the cube that we will be working on, and if I am in the edit mode, we will see this is an ordinary cube with 6 faces, 8 vertices, 12 edges. In this case, I'm not going to use the mirror modifier just like this because I want to cut it into half so I can clone the other half. So what I can do is to use the loop cut tool. Loop cut, we can have the function turned on here. When we have this on, we just have to hover above the cube, and then you can cut like this vertically or horizontally or like from the side, depending where the yellow line is. Or if you are like me, I like to save some time and I'm very used to having hotkeys always used, I will do Command or Control R to turn on this function, the loop cut function. What is more is that if you scroll on the mouse button, you can increase the number of cuts. But in this case, I'm only having one cut here. I will cut it into half. If I'm cutting this into half in the center of the screen, this cut line is sitting right on top of the y-axis. So in this case, I can remove one half of the cube. For example, the right-hand side or the left-hand side, it doesn't matter. To remove the right-hand side of the cube, what I need to do is either I select the 4 vertices here on the far right, or I will select the right face here and then use X to delete. What we can do is either to delete the vertices or the faces. It will do the same result. So if I delete the vertices, I'm cutting half of the cube. If I'm deleting the face, if I'm deleting the face, I'm not deleting the other face. I will recommend you to delete vertices. Or if you want to just make sure everything is okay, just select whatever you want and see the result. I will delete the vertices like this. Then I will have half the cube. Having half the cube, I can use the mirror modifier on. But I want to just draw your attention quickly here. So whatever we are creating in Blender, if we want to move it to a 3D printer to have a 3D printed model, make sure everything is watertight. And when we talk about watertight model, this is definitely not one because we want to have all the faces closed. And this now, basically, we are having the model open. So in this case, what you can do is to use the mirror modifier to complete the model, or if you are not using the mirror modifier, make sure you are going to fill the missing face or to create the thickness of this half cube. But this will be the next tutorial. We will talk about solidify. And solidify is one of the easy way to just create thickness to any mesh you have here. And then even though the shape is like this, it's like open, but with solidify, you can also create the thickness of the cube. Once there is a thickness, it means that this is a watertight model. Anyway, back to the topic. We will create the mirror modifier and we can go back to the object mode, turn on to the modifier property panel, add modifier. It's under generate. Or if you already know what exactly you are trying to put here, you can type mirror in the search function. Mirror modifier by default is using the x-axis as the mirror line because I deleted the right side of the cube, and by default when we introduce the mirror modifier, of course we are going to clone it from the left hand side to the right hand side, and if I am not using the x mirror, then it will remain as half. And if I am using the y, it doesn't matter because I did not cut the cube along the y-axis, so doesn't matter, it doesn't look any different. And the same applies to the z-axis. In this case, we are going to have the x mirror. Of course, if you look at this panel, you will see other functions, for example bisect and flip and mirror object. These are another level. As a beginner, I would just suggest you to use the very first line, which is x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, and in the future we'll talk more about the rest later. In this case, we are using, if you still remember, we have an origin of each mesh that we are introducing into the project. The origin of the cube is really at the center of the cube, right? If we go to the front view, the side view, the top view, you can see that from all the views, all the orthographic views, the origin is sitting in the center. It means that we are using this as the pivot point where you want to mirror the objects. For example, if I'm going to the edit mode, I'm selecting everything, which is half the cube, and if I'm moving this cube by grabbing it, G, to the side, to the x-axis, if I just move it apart, you see, I am moving apart and the mirror mesh is also moved apart to the right hand side, and that is because we are taking the origin of the cube as the referencing point. No matter how far it is, the mirror is put in the center of this cube because I am putting the origin right at the world origin. I'm mirroring my things. So imagine when the cube is you and you have the mirror at the world origin, of course you move further away and the reflection will be smaller and it's further away from you. And this is the logic behind it. In this case, if I'm moving this down below and if I turn on the z-axis mirror, I will have two more on top. That is because I'm moving the cube below the origin of the cube. And if I'm moving this to the back of the scene like this, so now these four objects is at the back behind the x-axis. So if I turn on the y-axis mirror, I will have the four of them cloned to the fronts. This is how we can use mirror modifier, and this is the maximum we can do because we can use one object or one part of the object to clone and other 7 parts in the scene. But one thing to be very careful of, let me undo it like this. Sometimes when do we use the mirror modifier? You can take the example of the bathroom sink that I am creating half of it and then I put it side by side to the other half with the mirror modifier, and then I use the spiral array to clone the other 7 parts, right? And in this case, I would just have to do the modeling on this side and then I turn on the mirror modifier. Sometimes when we have the mirror modifier and if you are very new to the modeling technique, then you will make mistake like this. You thought that you have this perfectly aligned. However, if you look at the model from the front, you see actually one of the vertices is off. And when it is off, of course, the mirror modifier is still applied. You have the half of the cube and then you mirror it to the x-axis. So it creates another half. But if you take a closer look, you see the gap. Maybe this is exaggerated. Sometimes the gap can be like this small and it will only be visible if you are creating a texture to it and doing rendering with some dramatic lighting. You will only see the difference like this. For example, for this cube, in object mode, if I spin around, you can't really see the gap. Sometimes you see it, but you have to be very focused to notice that. Only if you are zooming so much in the scene, then you will see this happening here, right? In this case, going back to the edit mode, what you can do is to just turn on the clipping. Turn on clipping meaning that it can prevent vertices from going through the mirror doing transformation. So imagine this is the mirror, the invisible mirror in the center, right? What I can do here without clipping on, if I am pushing my cube to the center, you see it's actually overlapping the other side of the cube. If I turn on the X-ray, you'll probably see much better. You you see the overlap area is actually visible, right? It's like a double layer. And in Blender, if there are two faces or more than two faces overlapping each other in the same position, this is not desirable because the shading can be off. And when you do rendering, it can have the effect of like having a darker shade or a darker face. Then you won't know what happened exactly if you are too new to the software and you don't know where to find it. And this is why we want to prevent that. We don't want to have any faces overlapping each other. And in this case, just focus on the X-ray here. And if I turn on the clipping, and if I now move the left half of the cube to the right hand side, let's see what happened. Grabbing on the x-axis. Now you see in the center there is no darker gray in the middle when it's overlapped because it is not overlapped. Now the entire mesh is stuck to the other half without overlapping any faces to each other. This is one thing to prevent you have overlapped face for weird shading and texturing. And now going back to what we have at first, we have the tiny gap, right? And this is only one of the vertices that is off. So what we can do is to just grab it along the x-axis again with the clipping on. If we are moving it further from each other, no problem. With or without clipping on is the same. But if we are moving this toward the center, now it's clipped and it's not going to go further. Imagine with the clipping off, if I want to move it to the left hand side, no problem, the hole is open. But if I'm moving this to the right hand side, even passing through the mirror, you see I can still do it. And when I do it, it's overlap. Clipping is preventing us from overlapping each other. I have been repeating this several times and I hope you remember that. And this is how we can make use of mirror modifier. It looks very simple. It looks useless for now, but if we are creating something like a table, for example, now I have a tabletop. If I want to do loop cut here, and if I want to do another loop cut here, another loop cut here, basically I can create a table this easily by extruding down this half and two legs. And I can also do one more thing. If your table is being very complicated, sophisticated in modeling, you can choose only to model half of the table. When you choose to model half of the table, you can clone the other half. You can also model a quarter of the table and do mirror twice. All right, that is how you can make good use of mirror. And this is the basic of mirror modifier. Of course, we are using the origin of the mesh to do the mirroring, and this is the most easy way to make use of mirror modifier. But you can also take reference from another object. For example, this is the table. Let me get rid of it and I will add another cube here with the mirror modifier. Now it doesn't look any different from just having the cube first added to the scene, right? Because I am having the complete cube and I am having this with its origin at the center, and then I have the x-axis to mirror. Basically, I am having two cubes overlapping each other. What I can do is to move this cube to the side, and then let me introduce a cone. I have a cube and then I have a cone, and the cube has the mirror modifier on. I'm going to take reference, meaning mirror object. I'm going to take the reference of the cone. I can either use the eyedropper to drop on the cone, or I can click on this list and then select the cone. When I select the cone, you see I'm taking not the origin of the cube as the reference, but I'm taking the origin of the cone as the reference. And now, if I'm moving the cone away from the original cube, you see, because the origin is different, now the other cube is mirrored further away. So I'm not having the mirror in the center of the world anymore. I'm taking the cone as the center of the mirror. This is how we can make use of other models or other meshes or other elements in the scene to do the mirroring. Sometimes when I am creating interior environments, this is very useful. For example, if I'm having a symmetrical room, this is perfectly symmetrical, and then I'm putting two rows of chairs or benches in the center of the room. I want them to be a little bit further apart. Then I will create one set of benches, and then I use the mirror modifier and selecting the room as my reference. And then if I select the room as my reference, I'm having that as the center point, and then I can clone another set of the benches on the left hand side. So this is how I can use modifier to help me reducing the time or the working time to do the complete model of an interior environment. I hope you can try, and I hope it will be useful for you to model some more sophisticated object. And next time we will come back to learn another modifier. Stay tuned. Bye!